Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition. That is Nick Suss of the Tennessean at Nick Suss on Twitter. I am Braden Gall. You can get to me at Braden Gall. And if you want to jump into the comments section, of course, please do so. If you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up, turn on the notifications, share the product. If you're listening on the podcast app, please rate, review, subscribe. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. Nick, good to see you. How are you, sir?
I am doing great. I am forcing myself into hoodies, trying to will the weather back down into the 60s, and we're here. We're here.
I have like 2 of them sitting over there on the couch in my office, and I'm like, I just can't do the show that way. It's going to get too hot inside. But you're right. I walked outside, took the dog out this morning, and I was like, please be okay to wear this hoodie. Just please. We're trying to will it into existence. I agree with you. All right. Sinkers, beverages. A lot of stuff to discuss today on the show. We're going to talk a little SEC football. We do that every week, but we're going to do a little bit more this week because there was one of the better football games I can remember between Alabama and Georgia over the weekend. Missouri and A&M is a huge pseudo playoff game coming up this weekend. Vols are back on the schedule this week at Arkansas. Ole Miss has lost a game. Is it going to unravel against South Carolina? And what the hell's going on with Auburn? Since it's a bye week for the Titans, we'll do a little bit more SEC. And there's tons of chaos to discuss in the conference, which is always fun. So we'll do that. We've got a couple of questions you and I are going to ask about sort of the second half of the season. How has the first month of the season changed our expectations? What are the best case, worst case scenarios for Titans fans moving forward? It's not really the second half, I should say, but the bye week is always at a very random time. What should Brian Callahan's strategy be? He talked a lot right before the season started. You've got to be able to pivot quickly when things don't work. So what are those pivots for the Tennessee Titans coming out of the bye week, and sort of what can fans expect from an adjustment standpoint? We'll do that as well. Sinkers, beverages. However, if you are in need of some cocktails, some beer, some wine, some champagne this weekend, make sure you go to Sinkers Beverages, pick something out. They will help you find something for every occasion. It doesn't matter what the occasion is. And if you sign up for the in-crowd, which is, of course, their rewards program for their preferred buyers, if you sign up for the in-crowd, you would have bourbons, come on and get some at around 4 o'clock. That happens every now and then. They do that, but you only get access to that email if you are a part of the in-crowd. One of our listeners got a Weller 12 last week on the program, and that's what you can get when you go to Sinkers Beverages. They do it every couple of Fridays or so, but you only get it if you get the in-crowd. Sign up for the in-crowd as well. Serving the East Nashville community for almost 40 years, 3-time liquor store of the year, so these folks know what they're doing. All right, sister store up in Hendersonville as well, Bluegrass Beverages, serving that community for over 50 years, Nick. We are not there yet, but is there something we should be celebrating this week?
Gosh, I'm going to a 1-year-old's birthday party on Saturday. Okay. Is that celebratory?
I thought I saw like birthday tweets from you, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
My birthday was 2.5 weeks ago.
Okay.
I did have a birthday in recent history. I turned a number, which is great. Good.
Is it a round number?
Yeah, it's a number that ends in 0.
Okay, that's a big one then.
Yeah,
that's a big one.
But no, I did celebrate it. I was at a Weezer concert, which makes me exactly as geeky as you think I was. And then we kept living, because that's what happens after you have birthdays.
Yeah. My goal on birthdays is to be told happy birthday by as few as people as possible. That's my goal on my birthdays. Before we get into all this football stuff here, I have to ask you about your reaction to Saturday night.
Yes.
I'm not talking about Alabama, Georgia. I'm talking about the NBC television show that's been going for 50 years.
Yeah, that's the anniversary I really care about. C-. It was the sketches didn't work. I think it was 5 live sketches, not counting the cold open and monologue, and I'm never going to think about any of them ever again.
You're not going to think about if one candidate happens to win the election, you don't think that more Maya Rudolph could be a good thing?
It could. No? It could. I hope that come season 51, there is a cast member playing Kamala Harris if Kamala Harris is the president.
I thought Maya did. I thought she did a pretty good job.
She did a great job. For those of you listening who have no idea, I've seen like 500 episodes of SNL. It's kind of the thing that I care about most in this world. One of the birthday gifts I received is somebody mailed me a VHS copy of the SNL 25th anniversary special from 1999. And I'm going to cherish that forever. But yeah, no, my wife's sitting right here. and she agrees that it's the thing I care most about.
I was gonna tell our audience that you are saying that within earshot of your spouse.
No, she perked up when she heard me say SNL. She's very happy about that. But yeah, it was. I judge episodes based on, am I going to care to rewatch this? And there were 1.5 sketches worth rewatching. The political stuff was good. It was a good cold open. They did a fine job with it. The weekend update was great, but the live sketches, which are supposed to be the bedrock of the show, didn't hit.
I will say that the weekend update used to be sort of an add-in when I was kind of growing up in the 90s watching it, and all the characters I grew up with, of course, are the Adam Sandlers and Will Ferrells and Chris Farleys of the world. Like that was my era of Saturday Night Live. And the weekend update was fine, but it seems like it has now become like one of the best parts of the show in the last few years. So I think Colin does a great job. So
yeah, they build around it. If you look at the like YouTube and TikTok views of the show the next day, the cold open and weekend update is what people are watching. So they lean into it. And for nerdy people who love the actual live sketches like me, it becomes a disappointment. But Bargatze is going to be great this week. I'm looking forward to it.
That's true. He's very good. He did one where I think he did a skit where he's like, it's all like Civil War generals sitting around the fire, or maybe it's revolutionary, and they're sitting around the fire and they're all talking about the metric system. It's actually it does sound very nerdy now that I've explained it out loud on a show. So.
Watch SNL. If you guys need recommendations, start with season 34, go to season 14, check out season 3. There's a lot of great stuff if you actually want to watch the show.
34, 14, and 3. There we go. All right. It's like his locker combination from high school. All right. Okay. So quickly here, before we get to all the stuff coming up after the bye week and some college football, I'm curious, now that you've had 3 days to sort of ruminate on what took place on Monday night, have you changed your opinion? Has anything landed harder with you or maybe lighter with you? There's quarterback stuff we talked about on Monday with PK. We talked about special teams. We talked about defense and Jeffrey Simmons' injury, and a lot of stuff happened on that Monday night. Bad football from Dolphins. What has changed, if anything, in your mind over the course of the week as you sort of sit with it?
I was reflecting a lot yesterday. And I think the thing that's sticking with me about that Monday game and also about these first 4 weeks in general, I'm going to throw 6 names at you.
Oh.
We got DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. 6 players. If you had to throw a roundabout number, how many yards per game are they averaging against the Titans?
Averaging against the Titans. I'm going to guess like 29 yards.
Yeah, it's 33. They're averaging. The 6 of them have 200 on the dot. You have taken 6 top, what do you call them? These top 30, top 35 receivers in the NFL and taken them all out of the game. The Titans are the only team in the NFL through 4 weeks that have not allowed a wide receiver to score a touchdown. That's really impressive for a team that is missing its number 2 corner right now, is breaking in a rookie. And generally speaking, they're not forcing turnovers. They're not creating that much pressure. I'm trying to rationalize it. I've been saying it in my head. It's like the Titans defense is essentially like, you hear somebody go, yo, you got to listen to this band. They got the best singer in the world. He can't hit the high notes or low notes, but he's so good at singing. It's just like, yeah, what does he do well? No, he's just really good at singing, not the high notes, not the low notes. He's not very good at the fast stuff or the slow stuff, but like he's really good at singing. And I feel like a crazy person trying to explain it, but like that's this Titans defense. They're the best singer in the world without any of the things that you would associate with being the best singer in the world. And I love that. I'm very impressed by that.
So what I'm hearing is T'Vondre Sweat has no melody is what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. I would say 4 certainly elite players. Keenan Allen, when healthy, pretty close. I don't know what Mike Williams is, and certainly, ironically, the one big play maybe of the entire season from Mike Williams led to the Titans losing a game, but that's neither here nor there. I agree. I think it's certainly not the direction I expected you to go, and I have, you can get wrapped up in the quarterback thing real fast. Your head just sort of like the gravitational force of the quarterback position and this particular story. And as I said on Monday, about a third of the way into the show, I just thought Monday was the worst possible scenario from a narrative standpoint for Will Levis, for the fans. I just think it was just a bad situation. It doesn't mean it's going to end poorly or end great. It doesn't mean that Will Levis should lose his job or should. is going to stay as starter. It's just when you write out the headline, interception on first drive to defensive lineman, injured, loses, sits out for 3 quarters, backup quarterback who fans think is better, comes in and wins game by not making mistakes. Like, that's just a terrible line of what happened on Monday. I don't think I've changed my opinion much on any of that stuff. Levis should be the starter. I agree with Callahan. There's no real reason to bench him. But that's a good, I think you need to put an asterisk next to Hill and Waddle.
Of course.
Because a 4-string quarterback who was, signed 8 days before or 5 days before is the quarterback who couldn't even get the team lined up correctly, which is, a concern and a problem for Mike McDaniel to worry about. But I think you're right. I think it's worth noting that those 6 players have 33 yards per game and have not scored a touchdown. So
I'm bringing it up more because of the phrasing of what has changed. My opinion on Will Levis has not changed as a result of this. And I think that you and I are probably in agreement there of he's a guy who, I've said this a couple of weeks ago, if the expectation game is think back to what you thought on August 20th, I was leading the charge of saying, it might be a rough first month of the season, but maybe they'll get in rhythm by end of October. Maybe they'll figure it out by November. It's still not November. So I'm still not panicking that they haven't figured it out yet. This is a work in progress. The thing that I thought was going to be really rough was the pass defense. I didn't think the pass rush was going to get home. I didn't think the corners would be able to stay healthy or hold on or have the depth or whatever. That's what's surprising me because it's done something that I didn't think was going to happen. Whereas the offense needing time to figure out what it is, that's pretty standard modern football stuff.
Let's play that game for a second a little bit more because I remember you and I talking multiple times at camp, certainly near the end of the camp, with what is this going to be? How concerned are we about the offense, or how, the depth and the talent on the roster? And you and I, of all the folks that sort of work on this network, you and I were sort of the folks that with the 2 lowest preseason expectations on the team's win-loss record. What is different than I expected? I think because of the Ernest Jones acquisition so late in the process and Tavondre Sweat sort of proving that he's going to be a solid contributor on the team early in his career, that I think I expected the front 7 to get pushed around. I thought the linebacking core was going to be a problem and that 2 defensive tackles couldn't do everything. Well, Landry's been pretty good. The linebackers have been a revelation and Sweat's been really good. So I think I don't know if I thought the pass defense would be terrible because the talent at corner was so good, and they put so many resources into safety that I thought they'll come up with something. But I agreed. I thought the pass rush would be bad. I just think the front 7 is much better than I expected in general at stopping the run, pressuring the quarterback, kind of playing into what Denard Wilson wants them to do. I think that part is, and that's probably helped the corners as well. There's no question about that.
No, and I would probably hedge a little bit, and 4 of the front 7 have really impressed me. Kenneth Murray has been up and down. I wouldn't necessarily put him in the same revelation category as I would Ernest Jones. I think that the guys rotating at edge opposite Harold have been pretty up and down. And then obviously the Jeff of it all. I think Jeff's been pretty good. I am a little higher on him than some other people on the beat might be right now, but also he hasn't been absolutely game-wrecking productive like you're expecting to of a guy of that contract. So
he can't understand. He couldn't throw a pitch right now in a baseball game, but he can play defensive tackle. I don't know how that works.
Well, he is right-handed and it's his left elbow, so he should be able to throw a pitch. But
touche. He needs Tommy John surgery. What are we talking about?
Yeah, those darn off-elbow Tommy John surgeries that are always taking people out of games.
For a pitcher, I agree if right-handed, but for a defensive tackle who has to use his arms to shed blockers, every single 300-pound blockers, I just don't understand how it's like a 2-week injury. I don't get that. I'm not a doctor.
It's is this versus this different motions? I don't understand the mechanics. Read Jeff Passan's The Arm if you want to know how UCLs work. But
very good book, by the way.
Very good book. I don't know, man. I am very much of the opinion that we probably talked about this in camp. I don't necessarily think that inside linebacker is going to win you games very often, and I am wrong about that right now. Like, I will always beat the drum of, oh man, if your worst player on defense is your inside linebacker, you can scheme around that. It's not going to make too much of a difference. And then I see the way Ernest Jones has made a difference on this team. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no, that was a really good acquisition. Sign him long-term. That's a good player right there.
Yep.
You pair him with Sweat, you pair him with Snead. I think there are some dudes that are making a big difference here. And that is the thing that surprised me. That is my first 4 weeks takeaway.
Do you think, and I agree with that. Do you think, are they, like, I think tight end is like we talked about this on Monday. I think tight end is a commodity in the NFL that very few teams have, like a legitimate bona fide starting very good tight end. I think there are handfuls of teams that have them. And frankly, in a league right now that is facing insanely reduced production in the passing game, they're 50 yards below where this league was per game on average. It's, than 4 years ago. Quarterbacks are more inexperienced. That certainly also could lead to some of these numbers for the receivers, right? Caleb Williams, totally inexperienced in that game. Certainly the guy for the Jets, not the case. But I'm curious if like a true middle linebacker that is a difference maker, that is Fred Warner, that is this guy who can command the entire defense. And I don't know if Ernest Jones is in that category, but he's maybe the next tier down, let's say. I'm curious if just like not many teams have that guy. The way tight ends are a commodity that don't really exist across the league. There are maybe 6 to 8 teams or maybe that have a legitimate bona fide tight end. And I don't know if I don't know if linebacker is the same deal.
It's funny you talk about that, because this has been a pet theory of mine for years, is that one thing we don't do enough when we're talking about the NFL and the quality of talent is judge it against the number of players used. Like, very geeky stuff, but how many good quarterbacks would you say there are in the NFL right now?
Good just being above average?
Yeah, above average quarterbacks.
2/3? A half?
Okay.
I don't know.
And then
I have to look at the names.
So if we're saying like 18, we're talking 18 out of 32 good quarterbacks. And then if we say the question, how many good cornerbacks are there? And we're sitting around that same number, around 18, except every team is always playing 3 or more cornerbacks. Right. We're sitting here saying, oh, you've got like a 55% chance of having a good quarterback, and roughly, based on personnel, a 12% chance of having a good corner. Maybe that position's harder, or maybe there's just more of them and there's not as much quality. And I think tight end's a similar thing. I think linebacker's a similar thing. These rotational positions where you have to use more of them, it's a lot harder to stand out because the talent gets diluted with rotation. So I would not be surprised if that theory holds to snuff, of since there's so much rotation at linebacker, it's harder to have a dude than some of the other premium positions.
And even in a league that's gone to largely 2 linebacker sets, it used to be you'd have 3 of these guys: strong side, middle, weak side, and everybody was running 4 3s, and you had to have 3 linebackers, and it's like So I think tight end is the rarest commodity in the league, but I'm sort of thinking through watching the Titans play for how many years now, 20, where you're like you can count the good the truly good quarterbacks of the defense. You can count them on one hand.
I do have validation of that. Over the summer, I was doing killing some time project, and I built the best ever possible Titans team out of Madden rankings, like year by year Madden rankings.
You did
middle linebacker, the only position the Titans have never had a 90 overall on Madden.
Keith Bullock wasn't 90? Come on.
He was a weak side linebacker. He was a left outside linebacker.
Oh, that's true.
He was like a 98. He was the best Titans defensive player ever, not named Albert Hainsworth. But
he graded out higher than Javon Curse. Okay, all right.
The best Keith Bullock was better than the best Javon Curse. Yes.
Good.
But yeah, middle linebacker, I want to say Randall Godfrey was the highest rated ever at like an 89. Maybe Stephen Tulloch.
That sounds right. But otherwise, you're David Long and Jayon Brown. Like what? Like.
Yeah, it's
all right.
not the best reputation.
Okay, all right. What should Brian go to Sinkers Beverages? Everybody, Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville. Ed asked a question here. Can the season be considered? This is a question we've gotten a lot over the course of the first month here. Can the season be considered a success, even if they definitely find out Levis isn't the guy? Yes, I would define success as finding out what Will Levis is going to be for you long term. That's not necessarily the answer you want, but having an answer is what you are going for this year, in my opinion. I don't know where you're at on that.
I will coin a phrase that no one has ever said before here. Knowledge is power.
That's good, Nick.
New?
That's
Did
good.
I come up with that? Yeah.
I like that. I think I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, please do. Get it etched on your forearm or something.
Tweet that out right now.
Knowing is half the battle. Did I come up with that one?
Yeah, I think that was yours too.
Okay.
Unless the cat came up with it.
Let's see. What does she think?
Oh, Cameo. What's the cat's name?
Reese.
Reese. Okay. Right.
I can't remember why, but yeah, I think that if you know who Will is, you get to make organizational decisions based around it.
Yeah.
I think that, and we're probably going to talk best case, worst cases, so I don't want to segue too far in, but the worst case scenario is we're sitting here on March 15th and like, I don't know, do you want to build around Will Levis? Like that's kind of a bad situation to be.
I think it's terrifying for Brian Callahan to think about that after the first month of the season. Stoney Keeley, welcome to the show on Thursdays. Cat content. Let's go.
She's going to keep yelling.
Well, look, she watched a lot of that game on Monday night. So, okay. That first half was the most. I think you were tweeting about this, and you said something about like an AFC South or AFC North old school. You missed the boat on that. I hate to correct old tweets because that's productive, but it's definitely an Iowa football game. It's what it is. It's an Iowa. It was an Iowa college football game. It was like Iowa versus like Wisconsin in like 2009 is what that was.
Is Iowa not in the AFC North?
That would be the Steelers. They look the same. I know.
Okay.
They look the same, and their strategies and philosophies are largely the same as well. Yes, Ed also coining a new term. Knowing is half the battle. There you go. That's a new one as well. All right. What should the strategy be here for Callahan going into the bye week? This is sort of a standard question for all teams around the league as they enter bye weeks from people like us on from a content standpoint. But I think it's more interesting from Callahan because this is his first year as a coach. He has already told us, I think honestly and appropriately, that sometimes it's not just one game. It takes you to learn who you are, what you do well, and how to adjust, but it can take you 3 to 4. Well, now they're at 4. There's a lot of adjusting that needs to be done, and they have the bye week. So this should absolutely be the time where Brian Callahan is adaptable, flexible, and pivots. What are the pivots that are coming or should be coming for the Tennessee Titans from Brian Callahan, in your opinion?
Full-time Wildcat?
Seems interesting.
No, I think that we need to figure out, to reuse what I said last week, the whole rounded square peg versus full square peg. I think that the offense needs to get a little bit closer to the vertical stuff that they led last year. I do think that there needs to be leaning into the play action. Callahan brought this up Tuesday or whenever that was. I think that the play action game has worked. I think that playing off the run game has worked. And the run game, for as well as it's worked, hasn't really been hyper productive. It's kind of been the ceiling of you can keep the offense going with it. So I want to see the pass game improve to free up the run game so these guys can have more success. And I think that means more vertical stuff, more play action stuff. And I know the shells and the too high, and we can get geeky. That's not this show. That's a different show on this network, probably. I don't know. We could talk geeky stuff later.
No, we could talk quarter. We could talk quarters cover. You want to talk quarter coverages? We can do that.
I don't. I'm happy to, but I don't. I don't. But I just think that getting Will into situations that take advantage of the uniqueness of his ability is going to be key. And yeah, he's processing through checkdowns better than he did before. And this all is going to work out if they fit in the system. And I trust that the system is a good system, but you have a guy whose talents are there's 10 dudes in the NFL with his arm talent, something like that.
Maybe less, actually.
I want to see a little bit more. I don't want to build the whole boat out of 70-yard passes, but I want to see a little bit more of that verticality that kind of made him who he was in that first game last year.
So a lot of that was off of play action and to DeAndre Hopkins. So having Hopkins back healthy fully is going to help that. I think Ridley's skill set should allow you to do some of that. You also have a bunch of pieces that should allow for taking up attention underneath Tyler Boyd, Pollard, Spears. Like, you should have pieces that are taking up attention, the running game, to your point as well. And I kind of have been thinking about this as well too. Like, we went into the season thinking he needs to be okay with the mundane, okay with the boring, comfortable with the checkdowns, raise the completion percentage. That was Brian Callahan's goal kind of coming into this. I kind of agree with you that they need to shake it loose a little bit, and they need to break it loose a little bit. And the best way to do that is to put him in a place where he is most comfortable, the quarterback. And I agree with you. You've got, if Hopkins is healthy and Ridley is healthy, you've got two pieces that should be very good down the field. Hell, you can even try Treylon Burks if you want to keep beating your head against that wall. But trying that stuff in an era of football right now this season where that is not a thing that happens, right? Like, and I'm not trying to go nerdy here, but quarter coverages, shell coverages, two high safeties, all of that, along with inexperience at the quarterback position. And my big theory is time to adapt by defenses. That's like the defensive players have adapted to the new rules finally. And that is part of why defense is having this resurgence in the last few years in the NFL and in college, frankly, and in the high school games. Offensive line play is also a big part of this as well. Bad offensive line play. But like shake it loose a little bit. Like here we go. Here's our sitcom reference, 28 minutes into the show. Shrinking is one of my favorite shows that's currently ongoing. It's on Apple TV. Harrison Ford, Vanessa Williams, Jason Segel. It's great. Roy Kent wrote it, which is also fantastic. Like the show is great. And one of the scenes where he's a therapist talking to one of his patients, he's like, you need to boop this guy. You need to boop him, which is a terminology just to like shake people loose. So to sort of like change the pattern of behavior by sort of like just shaking something loose. And it does feel like they hit on one of these big ones. It could start to shake loose the pattern of play calling and performance from Will Levis that could lead to some success. They need to shake it loose a little bit. And that's sort of how there's my sitcom reference into a football schematic decision about the quarterback. There we go.
And I will build on that. I think that I have never been the big, loud, yelling about momentum guy. I don't necessarily understand momentum, but I do understand when you play good, you keep playing good. Like, to oversimplify, there is nothing that tells me you're going to keep playing good forever, but there is something that tells me you think you're going to keep playing good forever.
Okay.
And I think that when we've seen him play well, it's a snowball effect. And those deeper shots tend to be the things that let him snowball. And that's not to say that maybe it's the old cliche of like, oh, you got to get hit once so you can get into the game. Maybe he just needs to hit a 25-yard in route and get into the game. That's his rhythm moment. And I think that they're succeeding on these scripted drives. So I'm not going to say change the script. But if you look at what's working on the scripted drives, it's a lot of like 3 tight ends on the field, bring in your extra guard as an extra blocker. It's take advantage of your size type things. You're not seeing as much of the let's go 4 wide and try them type stuff. Yep. So I don't know if that would work. I'm not in the scheme meetings, but that would be something I think would be worth testing at least.
I'm curious what we've always said about Levis, not to continue to make this about the quarterback, but you know, it's the NFL. It feels like there is a very delicate balance between the things that he does well leading to doing well and the things that he does well leading to him doing poorly at the same time. And it is managing the emotion, because I am concerned that if he gets back in there and continues to make mistakes, that it's going to unravel quickly, and that's going to lead to him. Again, I don't think you can break a player psychologically if you are a starting quarterback. Like, if you are QB1, you cannot be ruined by adversity mentally. You're too tough for that. If you are, then you're not QB1. You don't belong starting in the SEC or in the NFL. But the deep shot is the thing that could cost him a game. It's also the thing that could lead to the success of the game. The confidence and the emotion is the thing that you're talking about building on when he snowballs. It's also the thing that looks like he is losing focus on the sideline when he makes a mistake, because he's so hard on himself. And so it's a lot of the same stuff that makes him good is also what can cause problems. And that is a really tough place to be for a coach.
Sure.
That's a tough place for Callahan to be.
it's a thing that I've talked about a lot when people talk about analytics in football. You're not making a decision based off, is this going to work or is this going to fail? You're making a decision based off of, is the value of success worth more to me than the value of failure is not worth to me? Like, you're not talking about, oh, I increase win probability by 10% or I decrease it by 4%. You're talking about, is 6% a bigger number than 2%? Like, the math in my head adds up. I don't know if that's accurate or not. Like,
I think you were close. I think you were close enough.
You're talking about margins of success. You're not talking about success. And I think with Will, we're not talking about oh, is it going to lead to a 60-yard play or is it going to lead to an interception? We're talking about, what does the 60-yard play lead to after it happens versus what does the interception lead to after it happens?
Yep. It's the compounded interest here. We're just going to continue to throw metaphors at people as much as we can,
because it's like a blimp. It's like Blimpies, the sandwich shop. It's like it all.
That's where you're going.
Yeah. That's exactly where I'm going. Blimpies. I just rewatched 30 Rock. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, of all the sandwich places, that's got to be not even like top 10 on in my brain about what I would have thought. You're like, hey, mention a sandwich place, and I don't think I would have ever gotten to Blimpies.
Quiznos, hot and crunchy chicken.
That's a restaurant. That's a terrible brand.
I have no idea. Is that the gas station one? Crispy crunchy chicken? Did I get it wrong?
Yeah, Gus's Good Time Deli is all that I care about. Gus's Good Time Deli. All right. Let me ask you about best case, worst case here. Unless you have any more, the big one. I mean, like, something has to happen on punt blocking. That's something. There better be an adjustment from the special teams coordinator on this one. That one has to happen. I do agree that some deep shots need to take place. I'm with you on that. I think you can't run play action without running the ball a little bit, but you can also run play action on first down, and we get all of that. The old Vrabel stuff is sort of out the window. But, Pollard and Spears seem to be, while it's not great, they didn't even get to 4 yards of carry on Monday. They do feel like the most consistent and dependable offensive pieces right now. And the run blocking is way ahead of the pass blocking, and will probably continue to be like that for the rest of the season. So I don't know how much you can lean more into those two players without just saying, hey, run the football more. Like, I don't have whether it's screens, they're already doing that or trying to do that at least. I don't know what the wrinkle is. Look, maybe having them both on the field at the same time, something we said about the Derrick Henry offense for a long time, which is put two guys on the field at the same time and force the defense to be stressed in a different way.
Soapbox. Sorry, interrupt. Don't. No team in the world uses two running backs at the same time. That must mean it's a bad idea. Occam's razor here. If all of the brightest offensive minds in the collective last 25 years of the NFL have agreed, hey, it's not worth our resources to put two running backs on the field at the same time, I trust them.
Counterpoint. Kyle Juszczyk, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Shanahan. The best offensive mind uses three running backs.
If you want to call that, I call that like 1.6 running backs.
John Gall, no relation, agrees with me.
Guys, we can talk this into oblivion. There might be an outlier. There is potentially an outlier. But I've covered college teams where the big question is, well, why don't we just use both of our running backs? I've covered pro team. Why don't we just use both of our running backs? Because nobody does it. If it worked, somebody would do it. And so, yeah, the one team that has a fullback on roster uses a fullback. Cool. Go hire Kyle Shanahan and you'll get a fullback. I bet the Chargers have a fullback right now too. Awesome. Everybody uses 11 personnel because 11 personnel works. Trust it.
I hear you, man. I'm mostly kidding. Also, maybe Will Levis is more of a running back these days than a quarterback. So maybe he counts as 0.6. I don't know. He just doesn't look very fluid in open space. I do think he's a better athlete than people give him credit for, and but the fluidity is my issue. And every time he runs, I'm always like, shouldn't this look better when you're running? Just in a
2024 Tennessee Titans. Shouldn't this look better?
Tough, but fair. All right. Best case, worst case for this team. We've talked a little bit about what expectations have changed. And if you were at 6 wins, I was at 7 wins. I did have this weird creeping feeling at the end of camp going into the season. I was like, if I missed something, this team could be like a 2 or 3 or 4 win team, and that's still possible. But I'll stick with my 6 or 7 wins. I still think that's about where it's at. So have you changed your 6 win projection at all? Has that significantly changed, or are you sort of still in that ballpark and waiting to see what happens through November?
No, I'm still in the ballpark. I would say if we're talking best case to lean into it, you have that, 5-game stretch to end the year where it's Jacksonville twice, it's Indy, it's Houston, and Cincinnati. If you can round into form for those 5 games, and I think the game directly before it might be Washington, which suddenly looks a lot harder than it did a couple months ago. But I think if you can round into form for those 5 games, and even if you only end up with 6 or 7 wins, but 3 or 4 of them come in December against the teams that matter most and against winnable opponents in your division / a Cincinnati team that, let's be real, that game is going to matter a lot more narrative wise than anything else. I think that's your best case, that you are getting those wins late and feeling good about yourself heading into the next year. What you don't want to happen is you stack up wins early, you lose steam, you lose 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5 to end the season, and now you're sitting with the 7th pick in the draft thinking, I mean, do we try Cam Ward? Like you
No.
want, I just didn't want to say Carson Beck because I know the no would have been louder.
I disagree actually with that.
We'll talk about this later. I've been a Carson Beck guy for a while now, but
I think he's a top 10 pick. I have no problem with Carson Beck.
Yeah, but nevertheless, you don't want to be sitting somewhere between 6 and 12 in the draft pecking order and wondering. Like, if you want to rip off the Band-Aid, go ahead and rip off the Band-Aid, but you don't want it to be because you got hot in October and cooled off. You want this team to round in late. And I think they can. I think that is feasible. 2 games against Jacksonville in December.
No, I agree with what you're saying, and I think that's very possible, especially with a lot of young talent on offense that should, by the end of the season, be more experienced and more consistent and know what they're doing, confident, etc. I'm trying to come up with now, like, what's the worst case scenario for not knowing what Levis is, and then to your point, picking 9th or 10th or 11th, which would still be worse than 7th or 8th even. Which, again, I don't know if they can get that many wins, but it's like there's some combination of good play from the quarterback, bad play from the quarterback, and injury from the quarterback that would lead to not answering the question. And I don't know what order that needs to come in. I'm kind of doing this off the top of my head here. Like, if he's played terribly so far and now he's a little banged up, if he comes back and plays like really well and then gets hurt again, we're going to have 2 sample sizes of like good play, terrible play, injured. All of that leads to not knowing what he is next year. And I think that's the worst case scenario, is that you don't know. Best case scenario, I agree with you. They come out of here, maybe he doesn't play right away. They still deal with some adversity, and they get to their last chunk of the season, and they sort of are playing their best football. It's proof of concept for Darnell Wilson. It's proof of concept for the rookies. It's proof of concept for the offense and for Brian Callahan. That's the best case scenario. I agree with you.
Yeah.
So could you get to 7 or 8 wins that way? Maybe, but I don't see that happening.
And I will say there is a world where best case turns into worst case, and then Denard gets poached, which you obviously you don't want that to be the priority. But the way they're playing on defense, I am very impressed by the possibility that he could be a candidate within 2 years.
Well, this is the same conversation we had before you got on the beat about Matt LaFleur and Arthur Smith on offense. If you have whoever the opposite coordinator is from your head coach from an offense-defense standpoint, you want them to be great, in which case they're going to move on. So you have to bank that in. If you're hiring Denard Wilson to be elite, you have to know that you're probably doing it again in 2 years. Like that's the goal, actually. That's what you're trying to do. And with Callahan being on offense, you're going to be playing musical chairs if you keep hiring really good defensive coordinators. That's just part of the game. In fact, that is the strategy if you're Brian Callahan. All right. Sinkers Beverages, everybody, please go support good local businesses. Search Uber Eats for Sinkers Beverages. Have the booze delivered directly to your house. They drive so you can drink. If you are having a watch party over the weekend for college football, Vols, me and the wife and the kids are going to one of our friends' houses to go watch the Vols. Have the booze delivered directly to the party. Don't drive. It's a very important message that I think everybody knows by now. If you need great bourbon, they have a huge selection, and the allocation for the in-crowd members is the way to go. It's the best way to get access to really good, high-level, sort of rare type bourbons. Huge wine selection. If you need a bottle of wine for an occasion that I don't understand, here's an SNL quote for you: occasions. If you need wine for occasions, go to Sinkers Beverages. They will help you pick out the wine that you need for whatever occasion you need, like an anniversary, for example. It's one of my favorite modern skits in SNL history. I don't know if you like those skits or not, but that was one of my favorite ones.
I love a good nonsense 10-1.
Kowalski crystals. I love those. I love those skits. All right, and of course, Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. Go support good local businesses. And over almost 100 years of serving the community. Those two liquor stores, sister stores from Sinkers. Okay. SEC football. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's talk.
What did you learn from Georgia? So it's a great football game that almost 14 million people watched. Playoff expansion, newsflash, has not diminished interest in great football, just as a point of fact. I want to know what your one thing was that you took away from, aside from Carson Beck being an elite Joe Flacco level quarterback. What did you take away from the game?
I took away that it is possible to get one against this Georgia secondary, which I did not think was going to be the case. Whether you want to talk about the Ryan Williams effect or whether you want to talk about Jalen Milroe being my weird QB1 at this point or whatever you want to call it, this Alabama scheme figured out a way to make this Georgia secondary look pedestrian. And I know it was for 2.5 quarters. It wasn't for 4. But
best you can ask for.
Showing that you can actually move the ball and thrive against this Georgia defense was really, really impressive. I did not think anybody would have that in them this year, let alone a coach in his first ever SEC game. Really, really impressed by Kalen DeBoer there.
So I agree. And even Kirby at halftime was like, we didn't see any of that stuff coming.
Yeah.
Now, here's the question, though, to kind of build on that, because I agree with you. The question is, how many players in America have Jalen Milroe's skill set? The answer might be 0. There might be another one. Maybe it's the guy at Tennessee. I don't know. But Milroe's explosiveness, his burst, his ability to get to the edge on the ground, combined with the weaponry, and Kalen DeBoer's like, hey, we're going to pass out of 0 sets. All the stuff that Kirby talked about that he hadn't seen before, which we knew was going to be a part of the game plan. They were both going to hide everything for this game, and they put it all out there. And it worked for both of them in separate moments. My takeaway is sort of similar to that, which is I don't know I don't know any other teams outside of maybe 2, maybe 3 that could have played that game. And I've said it on other shows this week. Ohio State, Texas, maybe Tennessee. Not sure Oregon can do it. Don't think Miami can do it. I don't know how many teams could play that game. To your point, attack Georgia the way that Alabama did in the first half, or on the other side, make the comeback the way Georgia did in the second half on the road against an Alabama defense. I don't know how many teams can do that. And to me, that says championship caliber teams. And I don't know how many teams can do what you're talking about either to Georgia secondary. So that's, I think it sort of just zooms out a little bit from your point for me, is that
right.
That's a great game. I don't know if anybody else can do that.
No. And to fixate on the Georgia side of it, I will tell you the thing I've heard from Georgia people in my life. Kirby's got to start actually rushing the passer at a certain point. Georgia has won 2 national championships without actually trying to rush the passer very much, and that's really impressive. But I don't know. Jalen Milroe, I watch him and I think, what if you had Malik Willis, end of sentence, and then it worked? He's really talented. He can do all of the things that you would want from a really talented quarterback.
He's a taller, more modern version of Michael Vick.
Yes. And I think that Georgia has so much talent off the edge, and they use it in such a unique way to contain and kind of boa constrict offenses. Yep. But they ran into an offense that could not be constricted.
Yep. And I would also like to see Kirby Smart do some of the passing in the first half moving forward.
or use the running backs that people want him to use.
You're right. Efficient, effective, quick, down the field. Why not do all that in the first half? I mean, I saw the second half against Clemson. I saw the Kentucky game. I saw the second half against Bama. You could do that in the first half if you wanted to. And it seems like Kirby doesn't like to do that. Just give Todd Monken a call. See what he's up to. I don't know.
Mike Bobo scored like 42 points a game with Hudson Mason at quarterback. Like, we know he can do it. Let's see what happens.
I hear you. He was a very good coordinator in 2014.
10 years ago.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly. Those offenses were top 10 in the country. They just was a different game then. So, all right.
I actually have a picture of Hudson Mason right over there. I can grab it later.
I'm not sure what that says. I'm not sure what that says. Okay.
I wrote the cover story.
Okay, there you go. Awesome. Missouri, Texas A&M could be a playoff game. Yes or no? Question mark.
What do you mean? Like a play-in game or a playoff game?
I'm just a regular season playoff game. In which case,
sure.
if Missouri loses this game, they have Alabama and Oklahoma left on their schedule that are meaningful. The rest of the games they should win. They've struggled against teams that the committee is not going to like to see them struggle against, Vanderbilt namely. And if they go down on the road and they win in a hostile environment, it sort of changes the early season narrative around them. They stay undefeated, and they could easily finish 11 or 10 wins and absolutely be a playoff team. If they lose this one, I don't know. Their margin is so small that I don't know if they get in. A&M, meanwhile, the identity is sort of slowly forming, and the defense is very, very good. Strength on strength in this game, which is going to be a lot of fun. But A&M is what I thought about A&M was they're going to ruin some seasons, like Texas at the end of the year, maybe this Missouri game. They're going to ruin some seasons. But if you ruin enough seasons, all of a sudden you're the one having the season.
Yeah,
it's sort of where I'm at on that.
I like that. It's in College Station. What's the line right now? Like
2.5.
Yeah.
A&M's favored.
I probably am leaning towards A&M winning this game, but I'm also a guy who has been fading Missouri for 13 years now since they joined the SEC. I don't know why. I continue to be guy who doesn't give them enough respect. So I'll stick to brand here.
Yes, Amber.
Gig 'em.
I have nothing to say about the outcome other than just like the Bama Georgia game, sit back, enjoy, and collect information. This is data collection. Just learn about these teams, but enjoy it. It is an 11 a.m. kickoff. Not a lot going on at that time slot for SEC fans, although a lot happened last week at the 11 a.m. kickoff time slot. And it should be the focus of most of the country. There's not a lot of big ranked matchups this weekend and not a lot of huge games in the SEC. A lot of good second-tier games in the conference this week. Speaking of, Tennessee at Arkansas. I don't think this is a good matchup for Arkansas in terms of what Tennessee can do. If you watched last week, Texas A&M destroyed Arkansas's front seven. Tennessee, pretty good on defense in the defensive front. Should do the same thing. But Bobby Petrino and Taylor Green have been very good for Sam Pittman. Any concern at all? 13-point spread on the road, hostile environment, night game. Any concern there for Tennessee?
I will begin to be concerned when they give me a reason to be concerned. I think that they have chugged along, and as long as they are not looking ahead to some of the marquee games later on the schedule, I think Tennessee should remain in the tier they're in. I have seen nothing to dissuade me from my opinion that that's a really good football team. I think I said this a couple weeks ago. The best compliment I can give them is that I got bored watching Tennessee, Oklahoma. They turned a game that should have been very, very exciting into a snooze fest. And if you can do that, I'm pretty confident in your ability to do that against Arkansas.
Make sure you check out Lamestream Sports this week. Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel, of course, covering the Tennessee Volunteers. We had a long conversation with him about a lot of that stuff right there that you just talked about the dynamics of Josh Heupel evolving. I would say a program maturing before our very eyes. Again, as Brian Callahan would say, being comfortable with the mundane and being boring because it's the best way to win you a football game is a very coach dad move by Josh Heupel for a program that has largely been an adolescent teenager for the last 20 years. Finally,
they've needed a dad for a long, long time.
Finally maturing into their fully formed selves. All right, Ole Miss, what happened? What happened with Ole Miss? Is this something you are concerned about with the offensive line? They will play South Carolina this week in a game that should not mean anything for either team. Now looks extremely interesting because South Carolina has a great defensive front. Ole Miss could not really do much against Kentucky's defensive front. And this Ole Miss team is built on a tenuous, fragile strategy of buying a championship at a program that has never been at this level before. This has high volatility stakes, in my opinion. So what's happening?
I would say that In the time Lane has been at Ole Miss, what we saw last week was the first example of the team losing a game it was supposed to win. Like, there have been some toss-ups they've lost. There have been some underdogs they've lost. I cannot remember a time that a Lane Kiffin coached Ole Miss team was heavily, heavily expected to win and crapped the bed. But I will say, if we're talking about reactions to losses, reactions to adversity, the most impressed I've ever been in the Lane era was, do you remember the debacle when Matt Corral threw 6 interceptions and he refused to take him out of the game?
Who was that again? I do.
That was against Arkansas. That was the COVID year against Arkansas.
Was that like a 51-50 game or something like that?
No, that was the next year.
That was the next year. Okay.
It was like 33-26 or something like that. Corral threw 5 or 6 interceptions, and they kept throwing back out there because it was a close game, and they wouldn't put in Plumlee. They're like, no, we're sticking with our guy.
Oh, is that a John Rice Plumlee reference? I like that.
That is a John Rice Plumlee reference. That's the only name ever going in my head.
That's a sad state of affairs, my guy.
But talking to Lane after the game, the thing he said is, when you believe in somebody, you gotta let them know you believe in them. You gotta stick with it. You gotta trust that they are going to figure it out because you give them every chance to and every reason to. And that was Lane's philosophy when the stakes were, hey, we're a 2-2 football team in my first year. The stakes are a little higher when you're the number 6 team in the country and you lose at home in a game that you should win by 20. Kentucky has a reputation for dragging people into the mud with them, and Ole Miss got dragged into the mud. It happened.
He went 20.
I want to see the reaction. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the way they play against South Carolina is going to be the referendum on the modern Ole Miss strategy of building a team. I think if they go down there and respond well and play very well against South Carolina and fix some of their offensive line issues that we just saw last Saturday, everything's back on track and they've got a chance to do exactly what they tried to accomplish. If they go down there and the volatility and the fragile nature of how this team is built, and because they've not all been together for a very long time, they've not all been around in the same culture for a long time. If they go down there and lose, it's a referendum on the strategy of building a team this way. So I agree with you. Matt Corral, in a 33-21 loss on October 17th, 2020, was 20 of 38 for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Strangely enough, the reason I was thinking high scoring, for 2 reasons. Not only was it the next year that the Ole Miss-Arkansas game turned into that, but later that season against LSU, 53-48, Matt Corral threw 5 interceptions.
Go ahead and look at in that LSU game. Go ahead and look at what LSU's leading receiver did.
Was that 2020? That wouldn't have been Chase or Jefferson. Who was it?
Kayshon Boutte.
Oh, okay. Right.
Go ahead and look at those numbers.
Let me check. Hang on. This is great. 14 for 308 and 3, averaging 22 yards per reception. Is that good?
That was the second best individual receiving performance I've ever seen in a game against Ole Miss. Number 1 being the time Devontae Smith had like 5 touchdowns in the first half.
Bless. Also would, I guess, been the same year, correct? Alabama won that game. Alabama won that COVID game against Ole Miss 63-48.
Yep, that game was tied in the third quarter. Like, that was a really good game.
That's a basketball score. I forgot all about those COVID scores. That's insane. Let's see. What did he do against Ole Miss, Devontae Smith? 13 for 164 in that game.
I'm talking about the year before when Tua was thrown to him in Tuscaloosa, but we don't have to just dive down.
11 for 274 and 5.
Yeah,
5 tutties. Yeah, there you go.
That was really cool.
All right, Auburn. Question mark.
that was very Peter Griffin of you right there.
That's my whole question. You are up 21-10 in the fourth quarter at home with the ball inside the 40-yard line. You are averaging like 7 yards of play on offense in the last 2 games, both of which you figured out ways to lose.
Good thing
it's the most Auburn shit I've ever seen in my life.
Good thing they get a nice break. Don't have to face an angry buzzsaw this week. God, Georgia is going to be so mad.
At Georgia. Yeah. Hugh Freeze, man. I knew it was not going to end well. Baby Billy's tenure at Auburn was never going to end well, but I do not know I didn't expect it to happen this early, this fast, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, not many college football coaching tenures do end well. You don't really get to ride off in the sunset too often, but there is not even a midday high sun yet. There's just been a lot of morning. Just a lot of the sun's not really where it's supposed to be yet.
All the different definitions of that word.
Correct. That was pun intended.
Well done. Well done.
We will see. I think that they are kind of stuck in well, you can't make a trade. You can't go get a new quarterback. So we got to ride this out. And
But every other team in college football does do that in the offseason.
Yes, and they should have. But they didn't. And now they know that they probably should have.
It's a Hugh Freeze problem, Nick.
Sure. I'm not saying that.
The problem with, not to go on a Hugh Freeze tangent here, but the issue with Hugh Freeze for me all along has been that he's not that great of a coach. He's a good coach, and he won some games at Ole Miss and Liberty. He also lost a bunch of games he's not supposed to at Ole Miss and Liberty, and has already lost to New Mexico State and Cal in the last 7 games. If he loses to Diego Pavia on 2 separate teams, Diego Pavia, current quarterback at Vanderbilt, former quarterback at New Mexico State, who beat Auburn last year on the Plains. If they will play Vanderbilt, will play Auburn this year. If you lose to Diego Pavia twice with 2 different teams, that's all I need to know.
Yeah, but playing Diego Pavia at this point, I've been making the comparison. It feels like fighting a winter war in Russia. It's just unfair. He is just a guy that's going to make things stink for you. Yep. Kind of what I was talking about with Kentucky. He is going to make you play his style of game, and nobody wants to play that style of game. That's miserable.
The way you can stop Diego Pavia is to remove his legs from his torso, which could happen this weekend against Alabama. That's my concern about Pavia, is the way he plays is going to end up he's going to lose a limb in the SEC.
It's going to be really funny when Steven Garcia's his way to a win against a first-year Alabama coach. It's not going to happen.
After beating Georgia. That sounds right. Old Steven Garcia. I've had too many nights late with Steven Garcia. Side note. I saw this man. Side note. Here's a good Steven Garcia story. Not to get him in trouble here. We were in Atlanta all doing some work, and he was on set with me. We were doing a show for a client, and you get done with that stuff around 11 o'clock, 12:30. So y'all end up back in the hotel bar to sort of wrap up the night. It's late. There's not a lot to do. Last call is 2 a.m. So the last call is 1:50, right? And there's still 20 people in the bar of the hotel in downtown Atlanta. And normally when you hear last call, you have a decision to make. I'm either going to feel bad in the morning and order another drink, or I'm going to be smart, be an adult, say no thank you, and drink some water on the way to the room. He does neither and orders an entire bottle of Cabernet. And everybody at the table had to figure out a way to drink it. I did not, because I was a dad. So I went upstairs. I went to bed. Last call. Anyone want another drink? I'll take the whole bottle. That's all you need to know about Steven Garcia. And it was quite entertaining and fun to be around. So there you go. There's my Steven Garcia story. All right. Nick, what you got? What you got on the Tennessean.com website this week?
It's bye week. You can read some stuff. Go click. It's really good stuff. Support my coworkers. Support me. We got a lot of stuff we talked about today. Best case, worst case is coming out later this week, and report card for the season. Some stuff on trusting Will Levis as the quarterback. Gentry's wrote some good columns about this too. Check it all out. It's fun. It's good. Support journalism and make it so I get paychecks.
All good stuff. All right. Go check out all the other great shows across the 440 Sports Network. Of course, you've got the Paul Karski podcast. You got the Music City Audible. You got the Hot Read coming up with Stoney and JT on Fridays. You got Paul's show coming up on his platform on Thursday afternoon. We got SEC Football Live with Stephen Godfrey and myself. We've got all your Nashville Predators coverage at lowerbroadhockey.com. So go check that out, as well as the Gold Standard podcast. Lamestream Sports coming out on Friday with Adam Sparks talking Tennessee Volunteers football. Lots of stuff for you guys each and every day on the platform. So go check it out and go support Nick and the other great folks at the Tennessean doing great work there as well. Go to Sinkers Beverages for all your beverage needs over the weekend and the bye week, as well as you are watching football games and my New York Metropolitans. sure to disappoint this evening. Other than that, have a great weekend, everybody. For Nick, I am Braden. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you guys on Monday.